Howdy y'all. Today is a video about Sonic character design, as the thumbnail clearly showed. Really, it's as simple as that. I just want to express how and why so many people draw Sonic characters and why it's so easy to do so, and it is usually a gateway into doing art in general, and it was for me even when I was a kid. So to keep it simple, let's start with Sonic's design here. As you can tell, he is blue, he is spiky, and he is lanky. Not so lanky in this image as he can be, but that's the weird thing about Sonic's design, is that it's actually evolved over the years in several different ways. For when he first started, for instance, he was a lot pudgier and round, and he had black eyes instead of green eyes, which that design is revived today as Classic Sonic, which it didn't used to be Classic Sonic, it was just Sonic, but now it's its own separate entity, and Modern Sonic is the design we have right here. But I digress. The first thing we're going to look at is, oddly, his nose. I got it highlighted here with a red circle, and essentially, the reason I'm highlighting so much on the nose is that, at least when I draw Sonic characters, the nose is actually where I start from. Sonic character noses are often varied, but not so much that it goes outside of the realm of black dot on the face. But it can be extended like Sonic's nose, it could be pointy, it all just depends. From there, it goes to the face shape, and usually the face is pronounced in its own way as it's separated from the rest of the face, because it's just the mouth and you do the line that's just the facial shape. And then from there, we go to the eyes, which are typically pretty varied unlike the rest, because Sonic has a unique trait where his eyes are together in one eye. It's a little strange, but it works for his design. Now, there are rules to this double eye. For instance, both pupils can't be on one side. That would be weird. That would look cursed as all heck, to be fair. But again, I digress. Moving on, we got the ears. And the ears usually are pretty varied as well, depending on what type of animal the Sonic character is. For instance, Tails is a fox, so his ears are really big and take up the majority of his head shape, while for Sonic, they're just small and pointy. Then we move on to the hair. And the hair is honestly usually the most pronounced part of the design, and it'll usually make or break a character in terms of how they look. Not necessarily break a character, but you can tell which character it is silhouette-wise based on their hair, typically. At least in the sense of Sonic characters. Moving on from there, I actually want to move on to Tails' design, as it's a little more complex. And from there, I want to move on to the tufts on the face and how they're different, as you can tell. Eye color is different. There's some hair tufts over on his forehead that make it different. And the shape of his head is more of a V rather than Sonic's shape. There's not really a word for it. Tails also has tufts on his stomach emblem, which a stomach emblem is fairly typical for character design that's for kids. Another show that does it is No, not Teletubbies. Crap. I forget what it's called. But I think you know what I'm talking about. And if not, I apologize. From there, we move on to the arms, and the arms are typically not that notable. It's just two noodles, and that's how it is for most Sonic characters. But the gloves are actually varied between characters very often. And as you can see with Tails here, there's a little gray loop where the glove is, while for Sonic it was just a white glove. For other characters, for Knuckles, he has spiky knuckles. In fact, we'll go ahead and move on to him after I talk about Tails' tails here. Speaking of Tails' tails, Miles Tails Prower, he has two tails, and that's the whole point of his design. And it's pretty iconic alongside Sonic. And he can use these tails to fly. And that's what's pronounced about his character, unlike his head with some other characters. But for Tails specifically, it's his tails that actually make his design more pronounced and easy to read. Moving on to Knuckles, as I said before, the gloves have spiked knuckles on them. And that's really the main thing to say about Knuckles' design. There's also his dreads. They're pretty interesting, as well as his Lego shoes. But I won't go into anything super specific on Knuckles and go ahead and move on to Amy. Amy here, as you can see, is fully dressed, unlike the other two characters. That's because the rule with Sonic characters is that girl characters are typically dressed, while male ones aren't so much. I don't know why this rule applies, but it works for the designs, and as you can see, Amy's dress is right there, front and center, covering most of her body. And from there, that's really the only thing super notable about her design, other than the fact that she is Sonic but pink, and her hair has been made shorter in the most recent years. Not most recent, for most of her time being existent, to make her look less like a Sonic copy. And moving on from there, I want to get to the shoes. So we'll go ahead and move on to Shadow, because his shoes are probably the most pronounced of all 5 of these characters. But first, let's look back at the hands. If you notice, there are rings around his gauntlets, or whatever you want to call them, and those are limiters on his power. But as you can tell, he's got a lot more complex of a design because he's a newer character than the other 4. You can see it with his highlights, as Sonic points out. The spikes are more varied on his head, and his back spikes are about the same as Sonic's, but that's because he's meant to look like Sonic, but not exactly. But anyway, moving on, we got his rocket shoes here. These shoes can make him glide, fly, and just that's how he has his speed. Unlike Sonic, who just runs really fast. But as you can see between all 4 designs, all 5, not 4, all of the shoes are also very varied. Very varied. They're all different, and essentially the key points of Sonic design are all the things I highlighted: the nose, the face, the hair, the hands, and the feet, and the tail in the rare case of Tails. And that is actually usually how Sonic characters are based in their design. It doesn't usually go outside of this. Like, even for bird characters, they don't have wings. They just don't. But they do typically have, like, rocker hair and stuff like that. But that should be all for this video. It was just an explanation on how Sonic character design is pronounced in specific ways to make it easier to draw and to express, like, creativity to kids and stuff like that. It works pretty well for that. Sonic design, specifically Sonic, is actually probably as iconic as it gets. It is an internet warlord of a design. It's just always going to exist, and there's no one who's going to be able to destroy it. They can bastardize it, like with Sonic and stuff like that, but it's never going to go away. That's right, you're stuck with Sonic forever. Luckily, you're not stuck with me forever, but you are stuck with Sonic. But all that said, that's the whole video. Yeah, it's that simple. If you like the video, leave a like, and hopefully you like the second video in this style. Subscribe if you want more of it. I don't have a consistent schedule. I just post whenever I want, and I don't plan on monetizing at any point. So yeah, it's nothing too serious. I just like to talk about stuff. That said, signing off. Take care and have a good rest of your day.